Life on my ranch had finally settled into a rhythm after the absurd battle with the HOA over ownership. But peace, as it turns out, is fleeting when your neighbors are petty and entitled. It began innocuously enough. HOA Karen, the self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood rules, had a habit of driving her SUV over my meticulously manicured hedges. At first, I tried to chalk it up to carelessness, but it soon became obvious that this was deliberate. Every week, without fail, she would ram her way through the green borders I had planted along the edge of my property, leaving a trail of broken branches, soil clumps, and crushed flowers. At first, I attempted diplomacy. I left notes on her windshield, wrote polite letters, even tried to speak with her directly. "Please be careful. The hedges are my property," I would say. But Karen had no interest in civility. She smiled sweetly while her tires flattened another section of my shrubs. It became clear subtlety wasn't going to work. That's when the idea struck me. If she thought she could casually destroy my property with impunity, I would ensure that she never saw what was coming next. I began researching construction techniques, fencing options, and materials that could withstand even the most determined SUV. Concrete seemed extreme at first, but then I considered the sheer audacity of her repeated offenses. A standard wooden fence would be no match for her and her high-powered truck. The project took weeks. I designed the fence meticulously, ensuring it blended with the natural aesthetic of the ranch, but was reinforced with steel supports and thick concrete panels. I consulted engineers, tested materials, and even placed small trenches strategically so that no vehicle could ram through without consequence. When the last panel was set, the result was a masterpiece. A wall of durable, imposing concrete that curved along the edges of my property, forming a protective barrier around every hedge, flower bed, and young tree. When Karen returned the following weekend, she didn't even get close. Her usual triumphant smile froze as she approached, tires crunching on the gravel driveway, only to be met with a solid, immovable concrete fence that made her SUV look like a toy against it. She tried to back up, circle around, and even glance for a weak spot, but there was none. Every inch was fortified, every possible path of destruction blocked. For the first time, she realized that the game had changed, and the consequences were no longer hers to ignore. Word of the fence spread quickly through the neighborhood. The HOA tried to call it an eyesore or a violation of community standards, but their complaints fell flat. Not only did the concrete fence comply with all zoning laws, but it also protected my property from the one person who had repeatedly trampled it. There was a quiet satisfaction in watching their emails go unanswered, their calls unanswered, and knowing that Karen's usual smirk had been replaced by a furious, impotent glare from behind the wheel of her SUV. I didn't stop there. Behind the concrete barrier, I added subtle landscaping. Thorny bushes hidden near the base, vines that would grow to obscure the fence over time, and a few clever dips in the terrain that made any unauthorized approach awkward and uncomfortable. It was both a shield and a statement. This property was mine, and no petty HOA member would ever trample it again. From that day forward, Karen kept her distance. She parked across the street, walked past with exaggerated caution, and occasionally muttered under her breath. I watched from my porch, a glass of lemonade in hand, and enjoyed the quiet satisfaction that comes from reclaiming control. My hedges flourished, the flowers bloomed, and the concrete fence stood as an unyielding testament to what happens when someone underestimates the patience and creativity of a ranch owner. It wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. It was just justice, a tangible, immovable barrier between her sense of entitlement and my property. And as the sun set behind the rolling hills of my ranch, casting long shadows across the fence, I realized that some lessons are best taught silently, with concrete rather than words.